This hot chocolate recipe is brought to you by Squarespace, the only thing you need to get your new online marshmallow store or any other website up and running. Save 10% by using my link and code in the description. For me, the best hot chocolate is hot chocolate, not hot cocoa. You just acquire a very dark, solid chocolate bar that you really like, melt it into some milk with a little sugar and maybe a couple other little things, and that is it. Amazing. But first, because it's the holidays and we're being fancy, let's do homemade mini marshmallows. Homemade marshmallow really is worth it. Amazing texture. Do this the night before. Get yourself any square vessel and put it into a clean sink. I'm using a loaf pan because I want to make a pretty small batch of marshmallows. And grease her up, dump in an ample pile of powdered sugar. Brits would call it icing sugar. Get the bottom and sides really coated. This is your only chance of being able to get the sticky marshmallow out of the pan later. You can just dump out the excess sugar into the sink. Get yourself a little saucepan and a mixing bowl, and I have my electric hand mixer plugged in and standing by. This is going to happen real fast, so you got to have your gear ready. Half a cup of sugar in the pan, followed by a quarter cup of water, and I'll summon forth the upside-down bear. Just eyeballing about a quarter cup of honey. No point in measuring, it's too sticky. This is going to make marshmallow that tastes strongly of honey. If you think you won't like that, use corn syrup instead. You just need some kind of inverted sugar to keep the other sugar from crystallizing. Heat goes on high. Meanwhile, get a quarter-ounce envelope of unflavored gelatin and pour it into your mixing bowl. For a vegan substitution, use 2 teaspoons of agar powder.
Call me Agar.
Then you just mix a quarter cup of water into that and let it hydrate for a minute. This is proportionally a lot of gelatin, but I like firm marshmallows, especially for hot chocolate. I don't want them to melt instantaneously. Okay, as the sugars get hot, they'll become less viscous, and you can easily mix everything together by just shaking the pan a little bit and then let it come to a boil. This will happen very fast, 5 minutes max. You want to cook this to the softball stage, which is about 240 Fahrenheit, 115 Celsius. Though I like to push it by a few extra degrees, again, to get firmer marshmallows. That'll keep heating for a while as I get ready to pour it, so done. Real fast, drizzle the syrup into your bloom gelatin while beating it with the hand mixer. Please be careful not to splash any on yourself. Hot syrup is dangerous stuff. Then you just beat this until it goes fluffy and white, and you see the beaters leaving little trails in there. It just took me 3 or 4 minutes. It's ready when it's cool enough that you can touch it, but don't let it cool down too much or you won't be able to pour it. Stop mixing when it's still very warm. Little drop of vanilla extract goes in. If you did that while the syrup was piping hot, you might evaporate some of its flavor. Now, real quick, pour the marshmallow into your powdered pan. A silicone spatula is the best tool to nudge it along. Now, I can't even stop to get you a better camera angle here. If I did, the marshmallow in the bowl would set up hard before I'd ever gotten it into a smooth layer. I'll just see if I can get it to run into the corners there a little bit. No big deal if it doesn't. In addition to using honey, there's another thing that you can do to make these actually taste like something more than just fluffy sugar, and that is to brulee them. Quick hit with a kitchen torch. Yes, I left that patch white for a reason. Look at how the brown patch contracts. You can't hide from me, edges. Now, between that and the honey, these marshmallows are actually going to have a pretty strong flavor. In the fridge this goes, uncovered so that it can dry out a bit for at least a few hours. Overnight is better. Now it's the next day, and we're going to go over to my neighbor Erin's place and cook in her kitchen, where she just completed a massive renovation.
It was originally supposed to be 3 to 4 months, and it was almost a year. Yeah.
Now, I should tell you, Erin's beautiful old house here has a secret. You'll see what it is at the very end of this video. Stick around. Speaking of sticking, marshmallow may indeed be the stickiest substance on Earth, so you basically have to work with it in a giant heap of powdered sugar. The cornstarch in the powdered sugar is really what helps you. Dust up your hand real good and then just peel the marshmallow out of the pan. Nice thin layer. That's going to let us make nice little marshmallow squares that you can easily slurp out of the hot chocolate. And you got to grease up your knife and then stick the powdered sugar onto the grease. And even then, you're going to see stuff is going to stick to it. I'm just cutting the marshmallow into long strips. I'm leaving the whole white part intact for an experiment later. Now, the cut sides of those strips are unbelievably sticky, so I would toss them around in the sugar to get everything coated. Gonna look like a pile of worms. Line them up in an orderly heap, and now we can finally cut them into close to perfect squares. Then, one by one, you're going to have to tear them apart from their sisters and brothers and get each square coated in sugar. That's more than enough marshmallows for the 4 portions of hot chocolate we're going to do, but it's kind of the smallest quantity that you can practically make. Into a pan goes 3 cups of whole milk, and the heat goes on medium. Nice and easy. I'm going to start with a scant quarter cup of sugar. Here is a standard 100 gram or 3.5 ounce chocolate bar, very dark. That is 70% cacao, but you could absolutely use something less intense, and I'm just breaking it into chunks as it goes in so that it'll melt evenly. The milk has barely started heating up yet. I want the chocolate to heat up nice and slow. Then just whisk, and I'm not waiting until all the pieces are melted before I whisk. The whisking will help them melt. The danger here is that you're going to overheat the chocolate and it's going to split and go gritty. We've got a homogeneous texture now, so it's time to taste. I might just do a little bit of pinch of salt, but other than that, if it was just for me, I'd stop right there. That is such a pure chocolate experience, but it's very intense. If you want something more crowd-pleasing, you'll want a lot more sugar, up to a cup total, I'd say. And the fact that our primary source of fat here is cocoa butter and not dairy from, say, cream, that means that the mouthfeel here is really different. Delicious, I think, but the mixture is not very stable. If the pot sits around for a while, the chocolate will start to fall out of suspension. So you can make a little cornstarch slurry, equal parts starch and water, and then pour in really just like a teaspoon of that. Make sure that the hot chocolate is at least verging on a simmer to gelatinize that starch. That'll stabilize things and it'll give you a smoother, almost fluffy texture. I prefer the texture without the cornstarch, but this is probably closer to what most people expect. I'll give that another taste. This is like making soup. If you don't like how it tastes, that's kind of on you, not on the recipe, because you're tasting the finished product here. There's no guesswork. Just add little bits of things until you're really happy with it. I'm doing a hair more sugar. You can also do a little drip of vanilla, which tastes nice, though I do think it detracts a bit from the pure chocolate experience. And that's it. Pour it into one of Erin's mugs here and grab a handful of marshmallows, float those in, and that is just lovely. I hate when people put giant marshmallows in hot chocolate because you can't eat them. You just have to wait for them to melt into the drink. But larger marshmallows are certainly more photogenic, which, as we all know, is really what matters in cooking. So let's see if we can strike a compromise. I'm going to use one of Erin's biscuit cutters to punch a wide, thin round out of the part of the marshmallow sheet that I did not brulee. Now I can just float that on top and hit it with the torch. How do you like that, Instagram? Also, when the top is freshly bruleed like that, it gets this kind of crispy, super thin, phyllo-like texture on top. So in theory, the disc gets us that. It looks prettier, and it's still small enough that you could theoretically slurp it, or just let it melt either way. So say you don't like marshmallows. Here's another way to make this a little bit special. In this squeeze bottle, I have cream that I reduced in a pan until it just had a saucy texture. I threw in a little sugar and vanilla and then chilled it. Now for the toothpick trick. No talent required.
It's excellent, Adam.
Oh, thank you.
Very good.
Oh, that was so for TV.
Yes.
Now, say that you want to go into the mail-order hot chocolate business, sell a little kit with everything that people need to make the marshmallows and stuff. That's actually not a terrible idea. You'll need a website, and Squarespace has you covered. First, you just choose from their ever-growing template options. You replace their stock art with your pictures. You can edit the photos right in there. You type in a little bit of copy, and then you just drop in these blocks anywhere that you want on the page. Social embeds, open table blocks for reservations, or for a product to sell. And Squarespace has these handy video instructions on how to make all these things work. So in no time, you'll have a functioning online store up and running without having to work with any other company. To get 10% off your first site or a custom domain registration, go to squarespace.com/Ragusia. Link and code are down in the description. Thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now, as I mentioned, Erin's house has a secret.
So the house was built in 1920, and there was one unique feature I wasn't quite sure about, and sure enough is what I suspected. The house has a hidden prohibition cabinet. So back in the day, that's where they stored the hooch. Martini, anyone?
There's nothing like snooping around someone else's very beautiful historic house, and you can too. The historic Vineville Holiday Tour of Homes is coming up here in beautiful Macon, Georgia, December 7th and 8th. This is not a paid ad that I'm doing right now. Vineville is my neighborhood, and I just want you to come see it.
The neighborhood has been here for well over 100 years. It was Macon's first suburb, and it shows in the architecture. The homes are just from a storybook, really.
All these houses and more will be on the tour, including Erin's, all decked out for the holidays. My house was on the tour a few years ago, but never again. Way too much cleaning. Anyway, tickets are for sale online. Link is in the description. Hope to see you there. And make some hot chocolate for your family. Correct them when they try to call it hot cocoa. See how that goes over.